I came home to silence. My room stripped bare, my memories erased. They said, "You didn't need it anyway." But the real shock? Finding out what my life was worth. I walked into the house and knew something was wrong the second my boots hit the hardwood. You can just feel it. Like the air is too still, the walls are watching you. There was a weird emptiness I could not place. No sound from the TV, no dog running up to greet me, just silence and that sharp smell of lemon cleaner that never used to be there. I tossed my keys in the bowl and glanced toward the living room. That was when I noticed it. The bookshelf, empty. Not a single book left, just dust outlines where the hardcovers used to sit. My gut twisted. I went to the closet. Nothing. My jacket's gone. The old denim one I got when I landed my first job at the garage? Gone. The brown leather one my buddy Marcus gave me before he moved out west? That one was missing too. Every hanger was just swinging there like a cruel little joke. I started moving faster, my chest tightening with each step. The bedroom looked stripped. Dresser drawers half open, but all my stuff was missing. The watch my grandfather left me? Gone. The baseball from the game Dad took me to when I was 10, sold, apparently. That ball still had dirt from the field. I used to keep it on my nightstand. Then I walked into the kitchen, where my sister Kelly was sipping coffee like it was a regular Tuesday. She looked up at me, gave a half shrug, and said, "You didn't need that stuff anyway." Just like that. No emotion. Like my life could fit into a few trash bags and a Facebook Marketplace listing. At first, I could not even process it. I just stood there, staring at her, trying to find the joke. But she went back to scrolling on her phone like none of it mattered. I asked where everything went. She told me, "We sold it. Cleaned up some space. It was getting crowded." We, meaning her and Mom, probably. Maybe even my cousin Jake. They were always hovering, acting like they were doing me favors I never asked for. My voice cracked a little when I asked about the shoebox in my closet, the one with letters, photos, and the old toy soldier Dad gave me before he left. She looked at me blankly, said she had no idea what I was talking about. I turned and walked out before I said something I could not take back. My mind was racing, and my heart felt like it had been stomped on. I was not just missing a few shirts and keepsakes. It was like someone had erased me. Like I never lived there. Like I did not matter. But I had no idea that the worst part was still coming. I spent the rest of that day wandering the house like a ghost, opening drawers, checking corners, hoping maybe something was left behind. Anything. But every room told the same story. It was not just cleaning. It was erasure. The nightstand I built with my own hands. Gone. The framed photo of me and Marcus fixing up that old dirt bike in high school. Sold. My journals, the ones I had been writing in since I was 16, vanished. The only thing left in the room was the mattress on the floor, like they had left me just enough to sleep, but nothing to dream with. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. I kept thinking about that blue participation trophy from the Pinewood Derby. Yeah, it was cheap plastic, but I remember how proud I felt bringing it home. My dad was still around back then. He hoisted me up and told me it was not about winning. It was about building something with my own two hands. He would have hated this. No, scratch that. He would have raised hell. That jacket from the garage. Man, that one hit me the hardest. It still smelled like motor oil and cigarettes, and I kept it for a reason. First time someone trusted me to fix something real. It had grease stains and a tear in the sleeve where I caught it on a piece of rusted metal. That thing was history stitched into denim. I remember the day Marcus handed me that leather jacket. It was raining, and we were sitting in his old Ford pickup. He told me I had always been the one who stuck it out when things got bad. Then he said, "This is yours now. You earned it." It was not expensive, but it was a moment. One of the last real ones we had before life pulled us in different directions. Now it was all gone. And for what? I went back to Kelly. This time, I was not quiet. I asked her how they could just throw my life away like that. She rolled her eyes and told me again, "You did not need it. You never used that stuff." Then she added, "We were trying to help." Help. That word rang in my head like a gunshot. Help would have been asking. Help would have been a heads up. This was something else. They acted like my memories were clutter. Like my identity was a mess they had to clean up. Practical, they called it. Said they needed to make space, that it was time to start fresh. For who? Not for me. That much was obvious. But something in her tone made me pause. There was a weird tightness around her words. Something she was not saying. And that was when I started wondering, how much money did they make off me? That night, I could not sleep. My brain would not shut off. I kept picturing my stuff, laid out on some folding table at a yard sale, or worse, boxed up and listed online with stupid captions like vintage men's jacket, great condition, or lightly used bookshelf, perfect for dorms. It ate at me. Not just that they had done it, but how easily. Like there was no hesitation, no second thought. I needed to know. I needed a number. Because if they were going to treat my life like it had a price tag, then I wanted to see the receipt. So the next morning, I checked the family desktop in the living room. That old clunky thing they never bothered to password protect. Kelly had left her browser tabs open. Rookie mistake. There it was. Marketplace listings. Some still active. Some marked as sold. I clicked through them, one by one. My leather jacket. $75. That hit like a punch to the gut. $75 for something that held more weight than most of the relationships in my life. My tool set from the garage. Sold for $150. The bookshelf, $50. The watch from Grandpa? Gone. No price listed, but the seller's messages hinted it was real silver, sentimental value, price negotiable. Even my guitar. The old Yamaha I had since I was 14. I used to write songs on that thing, dumb ones mostly, but it got me through some rough nights. They sold it for $80. In total, I added it up, about $1,600. That was it. That was the number. $1,600 in exchange for everything that made my room mine. Everything that made me me. I stared at the screen and felt my throat tighten. My hands were shaking, but not from rage. It was something colder than that. Like grief. I went to the kitchen and found Mom making tea. She asked me if I wanted some, like nothing had happened. Her tone soft, too soft, like she thought this was all going to blow over. I asked her straight up, "Did you know what Kelly did?" She nodded, said it was her idea too. Then she smiled. I swear she actually smiled. She said, it helped pay off the electric bill. And Kelly needed some things for her apartment. I asked her if they ever thought to ask me. Her face changed, just a little, and then she said the words that really stuck. You were not using any of it. And honestly, we thought you would be fine with it. You are always fine. I stood there, watching her sip her tea, completely calm. Like she had just donated a few old shirts to Goodwill and done the world a favor. That was when it hit me. They did not just sell my stuff. They sold the idea of me. And they did it like it meant nothing. After that talk with Mom, I went outside to breathe. I sat on the back steps and just stared at the grass. It was overgrown, patchy, and filled with weeds, kind of like the way I felt inside. Unkept. Neglected. Like no one had really cared for it in a long time. I thought about calling Marcus, telling him everything. But I knew what he would say. He would ask why I was still living there in the first place. Why I had not left the moment I turned 18. Truth is, I had nowhere else to go. After Dad passed, I stayed to help with bills. Then I just kept staying. Because leaving felt like giving up. Like I was abandoning whatever scraps of family I still had left. Turns out, they had no problem abandoning me first. Later that afternoon, I walked back in and noticed something else was missing. My army duffel bag. The green one I kept in the garage with old keepsakes. Gone. That one hurt. Inside that bag was the only letter Dad ever wrote me. He was not a writer. Hell, he barely spoke half the time. But before he went into surgery that final time, he left me a note. Said he was proud of me. Said I was a good man. I carried that damn letter through everything. Through every job I hated. Every breakup. Every time I thought I was not enough. And now? Probably sold with the rest. Some stranger out there might have tossed it in the trash without even reading it. That was when I opened the junk drawer in the kitchen. You know the one, full of batteries, expired coupons, old keys. There it was. A folded-up receipt from the local pawn shop. My name was not on it, but the date was 2 days ago. They had pawned the letter. The bag. The whole box of keepsakes. For $70. 70. I sat down hard on the kitchen floor, back against the fridge, and just stared at the tile. That was the price of my past. Less than a tank of gas. I heard footsteps and looked up. Jake, my cousin, walked in. He saw me on the floor, chewing a piece of gum like he was bored. He raised an eyebrow and said, "You look like someone died." I told him what I found. He just shrugged and said, "We all pitched in. You had too much junk anyway." Then he said something I will never forget. "We figured you would not notice." They figured I would not notice. Not just the missing items, but the missing respect. The missing humanity. And that was the moment I realized I was not living with family. I was living with people who saw me as inventory. That night, I could not sit still. I paced around the house like I was waiting for something to make sense. Like maybe someone would suddenly come to their senses and apologize. But no one did. Kelly was laughing in her room, probably on a call with her boyfriend. Mom was watching some baking show. Jake was raiding the fridge again like nothing had happened. I grabbed my keys and drove to the pawn shop listed on the receipt. The guy behind the counter recognized the duffel when I described it, but shook his head. Sold already, he said. Came with a bunch of personal stuff, letters, photos. Real sentimental. That stuff goes fast. I asked if he remembered who bought it. He said he did not. Just some older guy who said it reminded him of his army days. That was it. My dad's last words to me? Gone. Sold to a stranger for $70. I drove home in silence. No music. Just the sound of the engine humming like it was the only thing that still respected me. When I got back, I went straight to Kelly's room. She was gone, probably out for the night. Her laptop was sitting open on the desk. I hesitated, then sat down and started clicking. She had a folder labeled House Stuff. Inside, there were spreadsheets. Multiple ones. They had tabs labeled Sold Items, Remaining Value, Split Percentages, and Target Goal. That last one made my skin crawl. Each item had a name, price, and little notes next to them. Watch equals sold for $110. Under market, but fast sale. Garage tools equals great condition. Worth more, but settled at $150. Sentimental items equals low value. High emotional weight. No one will check. That was the note next to my dad's letter. I swear to God, no one will check. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the screen. My throat was dry. My fists were clenched. They did not just clean house. They strategized. They mapped it out like a business deal. They even calculated who would get what. Jake had a 20% cut. Mom had 40. Kelly took the rest. And the kicker? There was a tab labeled Future Sales. My bed. My tools at the job site. Even my sneakers. They were not finished. I sat there for a long time, letting it sink in. This was not thoughtless. This was not just helping. This was theft. A soft, smiling, well-organized betrayal. The worst part? They had no shame. None. They thought I would be too passive, too trusting, too busy working late shifts to notice. But I noticed, and something inside me started to harden. Not into rage. No, that was too easy. This was something heavier. Something permanent. I was done pretending I was part of this family. The next morning, I waited until everyone was awake before I said a word. I wanted them all in the same room. No excuses. No miscommunication. Just raw, ugly honesty in the daylight. Mom was sitting at the table, sipping her usual tea. Kelly had a protein shake in hand, scrolling her phone like always. Jake stumbled in late, hoodie half on, eyes barely open. I dropped the printed spreadsheet right onto the table. They looked at it like I had dropped a dead bird. I pointed at it and said, "Explain." Kelly blinked a few times, like she needed her brain to catch up. Mom just sighed and said, "You went through our files?" "Our?" I asked. That was all the confirmation I needed. Jake chuckled. No shame at all. You seriously going to cry over a jacket and some old letters? Man, get a grip. I turned to him, my voice low. It was not about the stuff. It was never just about the stuff. Mom stood up, real calm, like she was trying to keep her hands clean while standing in the middle of a mess she helped make. You are overreacting. No one meant any harm. No one meant any harm. I repeated. I pointed to the line in the spreadsheet. Sentimental items, no one will check. I asked her, "Does that sound harmless to you?" Kelly looked annoyed. Not guilty, annoyed. She finally spoke. "Look, we needed the money. Jake's been behind on rent. Mom's card was maxed out. And you? You do not pay for anything around here." That was a lie. I paid the gas bill last month. Bought groceries. Fixed the leaking sink. I kept quiet most of the time, but I always contributed. Then she said something that made me feel sick. "You are barely ever here. You come home to sleep and eat. You do not talk to us. So what was the point of keeping your junk around?" That was it. That was the truth. In their eyes, I was not part of the family. I was a roommate with good credit and a predictable schedule. I was the ghost they tolerated, not the son, not the cousin, not the brother. I asked them one more time, "Why did none of you tell me?" Jake shrugged. "You probably would have said no." Mom folded her arms. "You always get so sensitive. We thought it would be better if you found out after it was done." Better for who? Then the moment came. The one that flipped something deep inside me. Kelly laughed. Not a chuckle. Not an awkward laugh. A full-blown, smug laugh like I was being ridiculous. Like I was the punchline of some inside joke. She said, I mean, come on. You are acting like we burned down your house. That was when I knew I could never stay. Not another day. Not another hour. They did not see what they did as wrong. Because to them, I was just there, not real, not important, just convenient. But what they did not know was that I had already packed a bag the night before. I left the kitchen without saying another word. Walked back to my room. Well, the room that used to be mine, and zipped up the duffel bag I had packed the night before. One pair of boots. A couple changes of clothes. My old phone charger. That was it. Everything else had been sold or stolen under the banner of practicality. I paused at the doorway. Took one last look around. Bare walls. Empty shelves. The dent in the drywall near the window where I once threw a football inside the house, against Dad's rules. It was still there. Funny, how the only thing they left was the damage. I walked past Jake in the hall. He was still grinning like this was all some harmless prank. Mom saw the bag and frowned. You are being dramatic. I told her I was leaving. No yelling. No speech. Just that. Kelly asked, where are you even going? I said I did not know yet. She rolled her eyes and said, good luck with that. I opened the front door. The morning sun hit my face like a slap. Cold, bright, honest. But just as I stepped outside, something clicked. I turned back. There was one last thing I needed to say. I walked to the living room shelf. Well, what used to be the shelf, now just a slab of particle board with a few leftover knickknacks. Buried under a dusty ceramic cat was a small stack of envelopes. Junk mail mostly, but tucked in the middle was one addressed to me. No one had bothered to give it to me. I opened it right there, standing in front of them. It was a check. From my job. A bonus. A real one. Almost $4,000. Performance payout. Apparently, I had done better than I thought. Kelly noticed the amount over my shoulder. Her eyes widened. Jake stood up straighter. Mom stopped sipping her tea. I folded the check in half and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then I looked at them, one by one. You sold me for $1,600, I said. Their faces froze. I added, and it still was not enough. Kelly opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg. I did not wait to find out. I walked out and shut the door behind me. Not hard, not dramatic, just final. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged to myself again. I spent the first night on a buddy's couch. His name's Darren. We used to work together before he got promoted and moved into a decent place across town. He barely asked questions. Just handed me a spare key and told me to help myself to the cereal and the Wi-Fi. I laid there on his worn-out futon, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow and steady. Everything felt numb. Not empty, just quiet. The kind of quiet that sinks in after a long, loud storm. The next morning, I called in to let work know I needed a few days. No questions asked. My manager's voice was calm, understanding. It was the first conversation in a long time that felt like someone actually heard me. I spent that whole day walking. No real plan. Just letting my feet carry me through the city while my thoughts caught up. At one point, I passed by a used bookstore I used to love as a teenager. I went in on a whim, ran my fingers across the dusty covers, and found a copy of Mice and Men, same edition I lost when they sold my bookshelf. I bought it. $5. No hesitation. It felt like taking something back, even if it was small. Later that evening, Darren and I sat on his tiny balcony. He asked if I was okay. I told him the truth. I do not think they ever saw me. Not really. Just a placeholder. A safety net. Someone to quietly exist around them without ever needing anything. He nodded. Did not say much. Just let me talk. That meant more than advice ever could. I told him about the spreadsheet. The pawn shop. The joke Kelly made. The way they looked at me when I showed them that check. Like I was only worth something now because they saw a number attached to me. I said, you know what stings the most? I thought I was being generous. I thought giving space, being quiet, not complaining, that was love. Darren looked at me, his voice steady. That is not love. That is disappearing. He was right. I had been disappearing in my own house for years. Fading into the background, trying not to make noise, hoping they would respect me if I just stayed useful. And for what? A leather jacket. A toolbox. A letter from my dad. Sold to strangers for scraps. But as the sun dipped low over the city and the skyline turned orange, something shifted. I realized I had a choice. I could go back. Forgive and forget, like always. Let them guilt me with their helpless voices, pretend it was all a misunderstanding, keep playing the role they had written for me. Or, I could rewrite the damn script. And I knew exactly which one I was going to choose. It did not take long for them to find me. 2 days after I left, I got a text from Mom. Just 4 words. We need to talk. I ignored it. Then came the missed calls. 17 in one day. 3 from Kelly, 5 from Mom. The rest all Jake, who suddenly had a lot to say for someone who laughed while gutting my life. On the 3rd day, Darren opened the door and called out to me. They're outside. I stepped onto the balcony and looked down. There they were, Mom, Kelly, and Jake, all standing next to Kelly's car like they were auditioning for some sympathy contest. I could tell from their expressions they were not angry anymore. They were nervous. Kelly looked up first. She gave this half-hearted wave, like we were just old friends who had a tiny misunderstanding. Mom called up. Can we come in, honey? Please? Jake leaned on the hood and muttered. We just want to talk. I did not say anything. I just walked back inside. They waited outside for nearly 15 minutes before they gave up and drove off. Later that night, I checked my phone. Kelly had sent me a voice message. In it, her voice was soft, like someone trying to sound hurt, but still in control. She said they never meant to hurt me, that things just got out of hand, and that she had been stressed lately. She ended it with, "You are still family, no matter what. We can fix this." Then she followed up with a screenshot of a receipt. One of my things had just sold for over $200 online. She said, "We were going to give you a cut. Eventually." That was the moment I knew they still did not get it. It was not about the money. It was not about the jacket or the books or even the letter. It was about them deciding I was nothing more than what I could provide. And when I stopped providing, I stopped matching. So I wrote one message. Just one. I kept it short. No anger. No guilt. I wrote, I am done being convenient. I am done being quiet. Do not contact me again. I hit send and blocked all 3 numbers. Then I turned off my phone and let the silence settle around me like a blanket I had been missing for years. 3 weeks passed. No calls. No texts. Nothing. At first, the silence felt strange. Like my brain kept waiting for the next betrayal, like a dog trained to flinch at the sound of footsteps. But then something else started to grow in its place. Peace. I found an apartment across town. Tiny place, 2nd floor, creaky floors, and a kitchen the size of a closet, but it was mine. Every screw, every box, every piece of furniture, I chose it. Not because it was practical. Not because someone told me to. Because it felt right. I started rebuilding. Bit by bit. Picked up a second-hand guitar and started playing again. Bought a new set of tools, cheaper but decent. Not everything had to have a memory attached. Some things could just be functional. But I did keep one shelf empty. Not for what I lost. For what I will build. One night, I sat on the balcony with Darren. Same folding chairs, same cheap beer. He asked me, "Do you miss them?" I thought about it. About the birthdays with store-bought cake. About the movie nights where no one asked how my day was. About the way they used my silence as permission. I said, no, I miss what I thought they were. He nodded. That was enough. Here is the truth. Family is not who raises you. Not automatically. Family is who sees you. Who values you when there is nothing to gain. I spent years being their silent safety net. Always present. Always helpful. Always easy to overlook. Until they sold me piece by piece for $1,600. But I am not for sale anymore. Not my time. Not my presence. Not my peace. I do not hate them. I just know now, I was never safe there. So I did not slam a door or burn a bridge. I just walked away and locked my own. And this time, I kept the key.